Welcome to the Dragon's Library, your source for games, movies, shows, and more. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Dragon's Library. Today we're going to be doing our last podcast of this year. So technically we're going to have one more podcast this year. I'm really hard at work on that. I hope you're going to like it. I'm going to release it on the 31st. It's going to be a kind of year in review thing for me. You know, going back, seeing how my opinion has changed, and I've had more time to think on some things, and going over what I thought were the most fun things of the year. That's going to be on December 31st. Make sure you turn in for it. But today we have one last thing, and I had to think about this because, you know, it's the thing that's going to end the year. So what was I going to end it with? Well, I really like Squid Game, so I've been watching more shows from South Korea on Netflix. And so I recently binged The Silent Sea, which is really cool. I actually really like this one. So for those of you who aren't aware of this show, first of all, go check it out. It's pretty good. But it's essentially a sci-fi mystery thriller about a group of astronauts who... Okay, so basic setup. In the future, climate disaster has gotten way worse. There's massive worldwide droughts, and so water is having to be heavily rationed. About a decade ago, there were some... Or not a decade, 4 years ago, there were some strange experiments on the moon. Research bases looking for potentially, solutions out in space, maybe mining or finding water in other planetary bodies in order to bring it back to Earth to sustain ourselves. And one of the bases was closed under mysterious circumstances when allegedly a radiation leak occurred. However, there's reason to believe that their research may have produced some results. So I think it's the Korean government or some kind of governing body essentially sends this small team of astronauts, scientists, and soldiers to go retrieve the samples of the potential research. As they arrive, they quickly find the station doesn't match the reports. Strange things start happening, and they start realizing that they're caught in a wider conspiracy with potentially greater ramifications for humanity as a whole. And I'm not going to spoil it right now, but I will say the overall, what the research was really cool. And I highly recommend you go to my spoiler section, because I don't want to spoil it, because it is really interesting. This is a really... So, see, I have to give this something... This is probably one of the most original sci-fi things I've seen in years. Yeah, the basic plot of, there was some shady research going on upstairs, and, they've been sent to go check it out. That's, the Alien-style plot. And, yeah, the basic setup is basic. But the world it builds, this world decimated by droughts, is very interesting. The systems it's put in place, and the overall sci-fi, elements that they add later on as you learn what the researchers were doing up here is really fascinating. The overarching premise, the gimmick of the show essentially, is really cool. But I don't want to spoil it because there's a lot of tension and build up to it in the first few scenes where they figure out what's going on. And I think you need to see it for yourself because you are gonna... I loved it. I just loved it. So I can't really say what it is, but I'll be talking about the spoiler section. So if you want to wait till that section, I'll do a light spoiler. I'll just tell you the premise, the cool sci-fi stuff they add in here. All in all, it's fairly basic as the plot goes, though. Obviously some crew maybe not aren't as loyal as they seem. You got a main military guy who, who's seen everything. He's kind of had this relationship with this scientist lady who was recruited to come because she used to be one of those scientists. What did they call her? A astrobiologist looking for life amongst the stars. She got really jaded after her sister died in the accident that got the station shut down. And you got a few others. You got another doctor who's more of a medical doctor. You have the exploration team leader, Han. Ryu is the captain. Song Jian is the astrobiologist. I'm sorry, I am horrible at pronouncing Korean names. I deeply apologize for my pronunciation. And you've got, another supporting members. They have a pretty horrible connection with the, video connection with two members of the Korean or world or whatever. It's a little unclear government that's sending them to go do this research. I think, no, it is Korean because they mentioned at one point that some of this stuff is banned worldwide. Yeah. Okay, no, never mind. I do remember now. It is the Korean government. It's like the Korean government that's been set up to help manage the water supply and find a solution to this crisis. Okay. Yeah. But it's all very interesting. I really do like it. It's the Republic of Korea Space and Aeronautics Division, SAA. It's very fun. I really do like it. What else to say? I can't really see. That's the problem when you're reviewing a mystery series. I can't really say a lot of the twists without ruining everything. Like, there's a whole character I actually cannot talk about at all. Like, I can't even do anything with it because it's a surprise. So I don't want to spoil it for you. So what do I do? Thinking. I guess I'll talk about the effects. Some of the earlier CG shots on the Earth, while kind of cool from a visual standpoint, stand out. The CG on Earth is very obviously of a lower quality. This is definitely a TV show, not a movie. Temper your special effects expectations accordingly. Although they do a pretty good job of what they have. And again, I can't talk about the major special effect because the whole, the main thing is the cool thing. There's this really cool scene involving ice later on that I'm not going to spoil, but it's just really interesting. Okay, I think this is about as far as I can get without talking about spoilers. So, I really recommend this show. It's not amazing. It's not like a perfect show. It's no Squid Game, for example. This is definitely a 7 out of 10. You know what? I'll give it a 7.5. 7.5 out of 10. If you like sci-fi shows, if you like, weird mysteries, or kind of like almost horror to a certain degree, like there is a bit of a like sci-fi horror tinge to it, then you're definitely going to like this, and I say go for it. It's a good show. I think it deserves a season 2. Genuinely do. Alright. That about covers that. From here on out, we are going to the spoiler section. Spoiler section. Which means that if you don't want spoilers, you should go watch this show. Because it's on Netflix, and I know most of you have Netflix. So, go check it out. Come back when you're done. Alright? You guys back? Cool. That one person who decided to say, shame on you. Go watch this show first. Anyway. So, the interesting part of it. Okay, so the main issue on Earth at the moment is that there's massive droughts everywhere. Like, you see, like, rivers dried up. The entire, like, the wide shots of, like, Korea's coastal cities is just, like, a cracked ocean because the ocean levels are receding. Now, I'm not really sure that's how, this works. I thought we were going to get floods, not droughts. But there's basically a massive water shortage, vague, undefined cataclysm, heavily implied to just be, advanced stages of climate change. So there's an underlying message of, hey, this could be our future, don't fuck over the present. Which, yeah, good message. But it's not really the main point of it all. So, what happened at the station? Alright, so when the crew arrives, there's supposed to be radiation everywhere, and they're wearing these protective suits and have all these sensors, but there's no radiation. They find a few bodies, first a mercenary who looks like he came here to steal some research, after the station closed, probably for another country, and then a few doctors who don't seem to have been killed by radiation. They're like decayed and their bodies look bloated, like they've drowned. Their veins are black. And obviously you're immediately thinking, oh, it's some kind of, virus. It is, but it's not. Like, this is the cool part. So, what happens is we first get to see it was one of the crew members who accidentally exposed himself to a bit of the water left in one of the subject's lungs still. And it manages to seep into his eyes. It, like, mixes with some of the water in his eyes. And he starts getting really sweaty and wet. And he's choking and drowning. And suddenly he's vomiting up a constant stream of water. Non-stop water. He's literally drowning in space. It's actually rather effective. Like, the scenes of people dying to this stuff, it's like, oh my god, this stuff is horrifying. But at the same time, you're like, but for people who are drowning, it's like imagine if you could just, like, vomit out electricity, Like, sure, you wouldn't want to do that, but if you could vomit out a never-ending stream of electricity, you could solve the world's energy crisis, maybe. Or if enough people could do it. Maybe if you could find a way to harness human ability to just produce electricity, or in their case, water. The ability to produce a resource in excess that you need is very, very valuable. But this stuff is way too dangerous. So, what's eventually discovered, and this takes like a few episodes, I think it's like the 4th episode when they finally get a whole idea on it, where like what it does. It's this weird substance that seems to be sort of like a mutation or a deviation of a heavy form of water, hydrodium or something like that. It has similar chemical composition to that. And it's later revealed to be dubbed lunar water by the researchers who found it. Actually, the researcher who found it was the sister of that scientist lady I talked about in the beginning, in the review section. So, she found it, and they've discovered that the water here multiplies, starts mass producing whenever it's in contact with living cells. Now, when the cells die, it stops producing water. So once a body starts dying, the water production goes less and less, and eventually once the entire body's dead and all the cells in the body have, died, the water just doesn't produce anymore. And there does seem to be a feasible limit to the amount a single cell can produce or something like that. But basically the water multiplies when in the presence of living cells. And that is terrifying, actually, because it can mix with other waters, as clearly shown when it enters the guy's eye. So it can clearly mix with water in an already system. If a drop of this stuff got into, the ocean, the world is just fucked. So fucked. The water would literally multiply to no end. They even show, the scientists doing an experiment where they took a single drop of the water, dropped it on a fish on a petri dish, and watched as the fish got enough water. Because for things that need water to survive, if it is just water. A fish could live in it. They even have this whole scene where they take a fish, drop it on a plate, put a single drop of the water starts mass producing, and the fish is eventually swimming around a pool of it as it's growing. So it's clearly safe if you're a fish or an aquatic species. If you're a mammal and have lungs instead of gills, well, you're just screwed. Of course, obviously they realized it was unsafe, and if they brought it back to Earth, it would be cataclysmic, but it's also the ability to produce water when water is so scarce. So the scientists started researching other ways. The best idea they had was essentially to create a new species of humans, basically genetically modified people who would have natural immunity to the water. Essentially, their cells would cause the water to grow, but within a reasonable limit. Touching the water would cause it to grow, and then it would reach a maximum volume and just stop. They eventually succeeded after a lot of failed attempts with a lot of illegal clones, because cloning is illegal in the future, as is heavy genetic editing as is the kind of genetic editing they were doing. So they were basically breaking loads of international laws to do all this stuff. And obviously the shady SAA wants the research back and to continue it on Earth, which I think is a stupid idea. Keep that stuff on the moon until the entire planet has been, vaccinated against it. And actually that is part of the way it works. The guess is that the girl they eventually survived had some kind of antibody or mutation, and it was something that was clearly able to be passed on to others, because when a bit of her blood or saliva got onto the doctor, she managed to, possibly with just luck as well, survive being exposed to the water, although she did nearly drown during the process. It only kicked in halfway through. So it was kind of like getting sick, but you had the antibodies to eventually fight it off. But you still came pretty close to, dying. And it's heavily implied that not everyone she bit or drew blood on would, survive. It's the kind of thing you need to work out. She has the antibodies, and yeah, they got in her system, I guess. But, we need a more effective way of transmitting them and isolating what exactly makes her immune. Now that we know it's transmittable, yada yada. And so, meanwhile, two of the crew members, one of whom died early on, he was like the first person to die, and they found his little PDA, were working for a international conglomerate who's been kind of, I think they call them like the they have like a nickname like the mafia of resources. They're basically a giant international company that controls a lot of the world's remaining resources. And they sent a mercenary group to obtain the lunar water. The surviving trader begins contacting them. He tells the others, I know how that model works. I'll try and hack into it, figure out who he was talking to. But really, he's just been communicating with the other. We find out halfway through the show that he actually was just communicating with the same handlers that were controlling the other guy. He tries to warn them that there's a girl on here that might be a part of the research, but they just want the water because apparently that's, they don't really care about the other stuff that was going on up here. They just want the valuable resource, even if it could potentially destroy the freaking planet. And you know what? I do have to like this. A lot of the people, so one of the main things that's throughout the show is your water class. So there's a set amount of water each person can get, and everyone has a card. There's class like C through A, and depending on how, basically C class gets barely enough water to live. That's what you get. You get enough water to survive yourself. B class gets enough water that you might be able to enjoy certain recreations, like maybe, drinking, maybe eating a lot of salty food because you'd have the water to rehydrate yourself. And finally, A class have basically unlimited access to water. A big thing is that pets are heavily regulated, if not actually outright illegal for anyone who's not in A rank, because the water being wasted on dogs is seen as a horrifying crime and a sign of extreme decadence. Because, why save a dog when you could use that water to, I don't know, keep a child alive? And there's a lot of kids. There's all this stuff about how kids aren't able to get enough water and moisture in the air, and there's increased infant mortality. And the Earth just generally seems like a horrible place to live. And everyone who goes on the mission gets A class for essentially the rest of their lives. They would be able to provide water for their families. Essentially, they would elevate them to the highest social class. But two of them decided to turn traitor, obviously in exchange for a lot of other things, but potentially maybe because they thought they could use the research for something good. One of the things I actually really like is that the traitor, I forget his name, what's the traitor? Taesuk. He's the traitor, and he was one of the mercenaries who came up here to silence all the scientists. So he's obviously feeling a little morally dubious about the SAA, and has decided to side with the corporation. But he's also, how to best describe it? The reason I kind of like his character is, he's an a-hole. He ends up going through and trying to kill the others. He murders two other members of the crew, leads to the deaths of several more, and it does betray them, But he's not, generically evil about it. It's not even in the sense of I'm doing this because I have to. It's no. Even while he's doing it, he's trying to do it in the least harmful way possible. He retrieves the samples quietly on his own. So maybe he could just sneak it out for the corporation. Hand it off to the mercenaries when they breach in, and then maybe everyone can just go home. He questions them on whether he needs to kill everyone. When they seem dismissive about the strange survivor in the building, who's eventually revealed to be the girl Luna, who survived, the only survivor of the experiments, he's like, hey, there's more going on up here. Maybe we should wait and, try and figure this out. I mean, we are trying to help the world. We should do this right. And, of course, the corporation is kind of just generic, evil, cyberpunk-style future corporation, Weyland-Yutani, and they just want what they want. They want the alien, they want the lunar water. And that's all that matters to them. And I do like that he has this kind of, dichotomy. You really do get this sense of conflict in him, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? I think it's already too late. I've already gone too far. which I did like from him because a lot of it's not verbal. Like you get one or two small texts on that little communicator, and the rest is mostly just facial expressions and hunched silences all alone as he contemplates what he should do next and if he should follow his orders, which is actually really, really nice. The water is used to really good effect. The idea of water that constantly multiplies while it's exposed to life. Yes, they do pay that off multiple different ways. So there's like a giant atrium in one of the lower hidden levels, and somebody accidentally released a bunch of the water down there, and now it's multiplying out of control and starting to flood the station. And it is actually tense while they're like small little hoses of water, like, don't let it anywhere near you. If it touches, if it gets on your skin, you're already freaking dead. It's just like, getting away. Like the trader, Taesuk, he gets the water on him and manages to stay alive a bit longer than the usual, but it's just horrifying to watch. Like, he's literally drowning, puking up, just vomiting a stream of water out of his mouth while he tries to cling to life. It's a pretty horrible way to die. Very effective, I gotta admit that. And then they jam the air vents and release a bunch of the water to the outside, and it immediately freezes, which causes the pressure inside to increase. They really get creative with this stuff. Like, this becomes a real hazard, which is really interesting. And then we have a kind of like what the fuck ending. So everything kind of goes to hell. Basically, the show ends with the captain making a heroic sacrifice. Everyone else has been, killed off by the traitor. He dies from the water. They manage to escape with a sample and with Luna. The two survivors are Han and Gong. No, not Han, Gong. Let's see here. Song, Luna, and Hong are the ones who make it out. They're the two scientists and the genetic clone who was exposed to the water. And then we just have this weird what the fuck ending at the end. I kind of love those in sci-fi movies. So Luna, so there's this big sacrifice moment where the captain realizes the control panel's damaged. It's the only way to release the airlock to let them out before the water gets to them, because it's rushing from the rest of the facility to the airlock, is if he activates it from the outside. So he has to lock himself out of the room. They bang on the door. No, don't do this. And he hits the button and releases them into the outside. They have to run away because the water's coming. And he just dies, slowly crushed by the pressure as it bursts out and explodes in this growing shower of ice fragments. Of course, before they turn to run, they realize Luna had already, left before they did. And they're wandering on the moon's surface in their spacesuits, and they just see Luna standing over the corpse of one of the scientists or one of the people there. And she just points at it. And she's not wearing a spacesuit. She can walk on the moon without a spacesuit. Like, Luna is just so weird. She has advanced healing. She can, the exposure to the water increases her ability. She's super fast, super strong. Her eyes have like that sideways blink that reptiles do. And now she apparently can walk on the surface of the moon and survive, essentially the moon's non-existent atmosphere without a spacesuit, which is just ridiculous. It is really, really weird. So, yeah. All in all, it was pretty cool. I liked it. So it ends with Luna and the survivors, Song and Hong, along with the samples they managed to save being brought back. And I'm guessing the next one's probably, if we get season 2, I would be interested in that, because seeing the fallout of the water being brought back to Earth, because you just know, if we get a season 2, they're gonna fuck this up. They're gonna bring the water back, it's gonna get exposed into our natural systems, and the entire world is gonna go from desert planet to ocean world, where the ocean is basically poison, which is a cool premise. I love it. I really, really do love it. I have to say that. I think that'd be a cool idea, watching as the Earth flips between these two extremes. So I really hope this gets like a season 2 or something, because I would love to see more of this. I was a little distracted during this one. I'm sorry about that. Things have been a little busy lately, but yeah, that's the Silent Sea. Really good show. I like the characters. There's a lot more like quiet scenes in this show, which I kind of appreciate. I do always enjoy a bit of visual storytelling without them having to spell everything out for you. But yeah. The English dub is okay. That's what I watch. You can also watch the subs. I know there are a lot of people who swear by subs. So if you're interested in subs, I don't know what the subtitles are like. I watched the English dub version. I know, I'm pathetic. But yeah. So that's all for this one. If you guys are looking for more content, I will be releasing that Deathloop montage any day now. I was going to release it today. Unfortunately, the editing software I used just stopped working, and every time I tried to load it up, it just crashed. So I lost like 2 days of work. I'm also working on a more scripted video that's going to be coming out in maybe like a month or so. I'm not sure exactly when. It'll be within a month time period, I think. It's going to be about the specific use of multiplayer in Deathloop and how essential it is to the overall gameplay experience. I'm really liking how the script's starting to turn out. I've just about finished the script for it, so look forward to both those in the future. If you guys didn't know, those are going to be on my YouTube channel. You can find a link in the show notes or in the description. If you're on YouTube, you don't really need to know there. You can just subscribe. If you're on any of the podcast websites, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, or if you're on Buzzsprout or my pod page, just subscribe. I would really like that. It'd be great if more people could subscribe and see these. Share them around. Yeah, that's about all for this. I will see you guys on the 31st, where we'll do our year in review. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and thank you for listening to the Dragon's Library. Please subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes. The Dragon's Library releases new episodes Tuesday and Friday each week, and you can follow us on Twitter at Dragon_Library2. If you want to suggest an episode topic, my email is in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for all your support.